Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing stories from real estate investors and how investing has changed their lives. This episode of the Inspire to Invest podcast has been brought to you by True Capital Real Estate, Strategic Success Consulting, and Infinite Real Estate Results. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast. I've got a great guest today named Gary Hibbert. And to give you a little bit more information about him before we dive in, he's a full-time real estate investor, licensed and award-winning real estate agent, author, and educator from my neck of the woods out here in Durham region. Back in 2008, he made a decision that would be completely life-changing by purchasing his first investment property. And through hard work and dedication, he left the corporate world to become a full-time real estate entrepreneur. Now he not only has a large real estate portfolio, he's off to his short-term rental in Mexico tomorrow, so I'm sure he can tell us all about that. But he's also a brokerage owner, an operator, and a mentor focusing on inspiring the same change that transformed his life, which makes him a perfect guest to be on Inspire to Invest. So welcome here today. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm great. I'm doing good. You know, even with everything that's happening in the world today, I'm finding ways to pivot and adapt, and I think that's always the most important thing, right? Is that the one thing that's always constant is change. And so once you get comfortable and familiar with that, it's a good and easy way to continue to keep navigating through this thing called life.
Yeah, and it sounds like you got started during a bit of a crazy time. You mentioned that you bought your first rental property in 2008 when obviously the housing market was kind of going through a pretty big collapse in certain parts of the world. So maybe we can start back then and why you decided that that was a good time to get started in real estate investing.
Yeah, so the reason why I ended up getting into real estate investing at that particular time, and it wasn't so much I said, okay, well, I think this is the right time to do it. It was more of I found myself in a situation where there was more month than money.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep up with, at the time, I didn't understand it, but eventually started figuring out, and I did figure out in 2008 that it was inflation. I couldn't even keep up with 2% inflation at that time. And the one thing that continued to bail me out was my primary residency. And I was like, you know, if this thing bailed me out 3 times, what if I had one more? And so where that all changed was I went into my financial advisor's office that day to take all my debt, put it into my mortgage. And she's like, Gary, you obviously do not know how to handle your home equity line of credit. You do not know how to handle your lines of credits, credit cards. And I'm like, get rid of them all. And so essentially I kind of closed it all up. And that was when I saw the index chart and saw inflation and what it was doing. And it's like, okay, real estate is the way to go.
Yeah.
And I did everything I could at the time in 2008 to buy my first investment property. And the first one I did was actually with a friend of mine. And it was like $200,000 in Oshawa. And I did a joint venture. It was like on a little piece of paper. Honestly, it was like just a piece of paper. We wrote down a couple of things or whatever. And that was how I first started. And I never looked back after that. I started understanding what real estate was all about and being a landlord and handling tenants and all that other fun stuff that come along with it.
Yeah. Now, do you still have that rental property today?
I don't. I'm trying to remember. That's a good question now. I offloaded that one, I think around maybe 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
So I had it for a good while.
Okay. So you started with that, just a single family home, renting it out.
Yeah.
How did you then accelerate that into becoming a full-time real estate investor and transitioning completely?
Yeah. So then what ended up happening was after that first property, so it was actually an illegal 2-unit. So yeah. Listen, man, there wasn't no classes I was attending back then. I was just saying, hey, just buy a property. But here's the one thing, though. After a couple of years, I did actually convert it into a legal 2-unit. So I did go through the city. They had at that time in Oshawa, they allowed people who had illegal 2 units to come forward and make it easy for you to legalize it. And so there wasn't a whole lot at the time that I had to do. And then I got the certificate, which was great. How I transitioned into additional investment properties is that the second property I bought was in Scarborough, and I did that with my brother-in-law. Learned a lot then with the importance of screen and tenant. So the tenant that I ended up putting in the basement, I didn't even do a lease agreement or nothing, just put him in. He just gave me some cash, and I was like, man, this is such an easy game.
Oh, God.
Why more people? And that was when I understood the importance of screening tenants effectively and properly. And so we ended up offloading that one. And then in 2009, I joined a real estate group, and I was like, just groups out there. There are people that are teaching this, and there's a room full of investors that are willing to share their story, their journey, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
And it was so different from the corporate world, because what I found in the corporate world, that people were kind of like, they would teach you stuff, but they wouldn't teach you everything because they didn't want you to leapfrog over
Yeah.
them. But in these rooms, people were willing to share everything.
Yeah.
Like, this is incredible. And so then from 2009 until 2014, we bought like 19 properties. And it wasn't so much.
Were they all joint ventures, like the first two?
Many of them were. Yeah, many of them were. I would say, I think probably like 90% of them were joint ventures. So I started learning because I didn't have any money. So then I had to understand joint ventures and raising capital and presenting deals. And I mean, I was terrible in the beginning because I was trying to sell the property to them and the numbers. And what I realized is that I don't sell that, I sell myself.
Yeah.
And
also I think what it can do for them, right? Like
exactly
how that changed your life and how that can really start to impact their life in the bottom line, right?
Yeah. But you know, the number of homes that I bought during that time is not really that important. I say that because I use a whiteboard and I talk about that all the time. And I'd written down that I wanted 20 properties. I don't know why I stopped. I think it was just because I now understood that it wasn't about, oh, you have to have the money. And it was also because I started to understand to believe in myself and to write down what I wanted. That was the more important thing, not the financial piece of it, but more of the believing in myself.
Yeah.
And then in 2014, I then left my full-time job and then just went into real estate investing and teaching and helping other people.
You mind if we step back just quickly? So you're talking about the joint ventures. Now, did you line up the properties first and have them under contract before you approached possible joint venture partners? Or did you have people lined up that you knew might be interested and then you went out and found the property?
Yeah, I did a combination of both. So I've started trying to understand how to have the conversations. And so I had, in the beginning, maybe one or two people that were lined up. But then what I started doing was then finding really good deals. And then what I would do is I would then share them, because then we started Smart Home Choice, and then we had members as well too.
Yeah.
And then present these opportunities and deals to them, which then also created other additional opportunities and joint ventures by doing it that way as well. Yeah. So that's pretty much the way that I did it.
Yeah. Now that took you up to 2014. So now did you make the jump from single family into multifamily, or that, I guess, what's the last 9 years looking like?
Yeah. So then we went from 2015, then we started going in more into the 2 years. So prior to that, it was mostly rent to own. I did a lot of rent to own. So I actually wrote a book on rent to own. We've probably done about, I don't know, maybe about 70 rent to own deals. But whether some of them keeping ourselves and other ones we would actually wholesale them to other investors. And then from 2015, then we got into the single family home conversions, the BRRRR. And I remember seeing all these BRRRR things coming, like, what the heck is this BRRRR? And I was like, okay, well, now I know everybody knows what it is now. Yeah. And so we started doing that, and then we started teaching investors that methodology, because the single family homes, they weren't working that well anymore. You needed that additional income to make these properties cash flow. And then we went from Durham to Peterborough in around 2016, 2017, somewhere around that time frame. Yeah. Because a lot of Toronto agents were coming out and just crushing us. And so we found a new marketplace for our investors, went to Peterborough and did a lot of conversions out there. Yeah. And the numbers just made so much more sense. And then this is another pivotal moment. In 2017, I then started taking a look at, well, what's next? Should I do multifamily? And I did some classes on that. And we're like, okay, this is the path that we're going to take, go down the multifamily space. And I remember going to this Christmas party, and I was having a conversation with one of my mentors at the time. And I told him, like, he goes, like, what do you got planned for next year? I'm like, I'm going to get into multifamily. And he goes, that's one way of doing it. Yeah. I was like, okay. And he goes, well, Gary, how many more doors do you need? How many more properties do you need? Yeah. He goes, you're at the point now, why don't you just become the bank? And I was like, the bank? He goes, yeah, take a look at private lending or investing. I'll show you a few things. And so we looked at it, and I'm like, you know what? This is a great idea. Like how many more doors do I need? And I think a lot of people get caught up in
The
100
number.
doors, 200 doors. And I didn't want to go down that path. I'm not knocking multifamily investing by any means. And look, and I might still even go down that path. But we looked at it and it made sense. And then we started a company and we brought in a partner that understood it very well. My wife was a mortgage agent at the time as well too. And then we just kind of combined our forces and resources of my strength and utilizing his strength and then coming together where we complemented each other.
So then how does a private lending business work? And then how does that help just in terms of building up equity for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get too much into the details of it because I'm not the expert in that space. I'm not a mortgage agent by any means. But what that did was it helped me create additional cash flow, which it allowed me to then free up some additional time to focus more on things that I enjoyed doing, which was the mentorship, growing smart home choice. And then I got pulled into a brokerage as well too, which we can dive a little bit more into that later on. And not so much focusing on building my portfolio anymore. So I was happy with the size of the portfolio. And then just kind of moved more into the private lending space. And so when deals would come up, I would lend my money out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because I know a lot of people that have these really big portfolios, sometimes even in the range of, $100 million plus, but they literally seem like they're struggling and they have no money. So they're equity rich, but they're cash poor, right? So I think it's so important to have that balance where sometimes people can come in from either end. But at the end of the day, you want to have that equity down the road, but you still have bills to pay, still have a life to live. So it's important to have all those different streams of income just to make sure that you are protected and you can really take care of yourself.
And that's a good point that you bring up, right? I remember I saw this quote not too long ago from Ross Perot. He said, being an entrepreneur lies on the razor edge of success and failure. And so what happens is, when you first start out, you're like, man, if I can just get $5,000 a month, my whole life will change and I'll be fine. And then you get there and all of a sudden like, oh, well, you hired an admin or you hired this person, or now you have an operations manager. Now it's not 5,000, now you need 10,000, you need 20. And so you're always finding this balance as you continue to grow. And that's part of it all, right? And so you got to be careful of how fast you grow, how you're growing, and what your end goal is as well too.
Now, it sounds like you've had quite the journey in the last 15 years. When you look back at everything, is there any one thing that stands out to you that you feel like is your biggest success?
Yeah, I would say I went from waiting to not waiting. I went from waiting for the right opportunity, waiting to be invited to the table, waiting for the interest rates to be at the right level, waiting for opportunities, anything to present itself. And you know what doesn't wait for you, Serena, is fear doesn't wait for you. Your bills don't wait for you. Depression doesn't wait. Anxiety doesn't wait. And what I realized is that it was purpose. I was lacking purpose. I was lacking a vision and a dream. And that's really what changed for me. And so if I really kind of go back, the start of it all was the mindset piece. It was listening to Jim Rohn, it was listening to Brian Tracy, it was listening to Zig Ziglar, it was listening to those people that changed my mindset. That's really the game changer for me, was like believing in myself. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember I used to listen to it in the car all the time going to work. And I remember at lunchtime, we were going up for lunch, and we jumped in my car, and my coworker jumps in and he hears so I turn it on, Jim Rohn comes on. And he's like, you listen to that? And I'm like, no, it's not mine. It's my wife's. But my mindset wasn't there yet. I was getting there. But I was like, because sometimes you hear that stuff, people believe that it's just this like wishful thinking or it can't happen to me. Let me tell you, 100% it can. But you've got to feed your mind the right information. And especially, I would even say, even more importantly now with the news and social media and what you get bombarded with.
It's kind of hard to escape it. So I mean, I went to school for journalism even, right? So the news was always on, had the paper for a period of time way back when. But I think now it's like there is a lot of doom and gloom. So I think you really just have to focus on what your objectives are, what your goals are, what's positive, surround yourself with all those people that are aligned and, like you said, like-minded thinkers and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%, right? Because there's so much fear. And I had a conversation about this earlier today, where I was making quicker, faster decisions in 2010 to 2014 when I knew less. And I was just focused on the mindset. Because
Yeah.
if you remember back then too, and people don't remember this, there was a lot of fear in the market because they're like, well, the US got hit, oh, come Canada get hit. Canada's gonna get hit, interest rates are gonna go up. And there was a ton of fear, and people forget that. But you look back and like, well, of course you should have invested back then. That made so much sense. And
Yeah.
so I believe now you're going to see some phenomenal opportunities. You are seeing phenomenal opportunities, right?
Yeah.
But I see it now where I see so much information now. And now even for me, it kind of freezes me a little bit as well too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Why am I being frozen here? Oh, because I'm looking at this data point. I'm looking at this chart. And of course the chart has to come down. And so you got to be careful of what you're looking at and paying attention to, right? And focus on the mindset and just go take action.
And I think it's important to think that right now, if you're to buy something, for example, and the rates are high, you kind of know what you're dealing with. I think for the investors that are struggling right now might be the ones that got into the market 2-3 years ago, and maybe they thought they were running their numbers conservatively, but nobody dreamed that interest rates were going to triple in a year, right? So they probably didn't factor that in. So I think some of those companies or people could be struggling in a way that for anyone walking in right now, you'd have to think like they're probably going to be extra conservative, but they know what they're dealing with, and things have only got to get better. This
and you know what? But I will say this though, to those people that jumped in 2020 or 2019, 2021, welcome to the game.
Yeah.
At least you're playing. At least you're playing, and you're not watching. And you're learning. And I can guarantee those ones that stick around for the next, say, 5 or 10 years, they're going to have some great stories, and they'll be fine. You just have to fight through it and struggle a little bit. But there's things you can do. You can you can get partners to come in, you can get cash injection, you can see what's higher and better use for your property. Don't just say, oh, well, this wasn't for me and my coworkers are right. It's very easy to do that. And then all of a sudden, friends and families are like, told you.
Yeah. Yeah, the naysayers. Now, I know you talked a little bit about some of your challenges in the early years, just not qualifying tenants and stuff like that. When you look back at everything, what would you say are a couple of the biggest lessons that you've learned and your takeaways from them?
Oh, the biggest lessons that I've learned is it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall down, just as long as you get back up. I think that's what it is. When I take a look at like each year, I throw a lot of things at the darts and at the dartboard, and there's only maybe 2 or 3 that really stick. And so that's really what I think it comes down to. Just try different things, learn different things. Fail early, fail fast, right? And learn from those mistakes and move forward. Don't be scared of failing. I think that's the biggest thing for me, and don't be scared to try new things like public speaking. I hated public speaking. And I still, even at times, like when people ask me to come and do a talk, I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay?
Now. I mean, when I went to your event, I thought you were very natural and felt really comfortable, but it takes time to work towards being that way. It's not like anyone just probably walks that way for the very first time.
No, I have the same fears like anybody else does, right? I want to make sure that I'm delivering the best message, but yeah, it's part of life. It's part of things, and then it allows you to push out into your uncomfort zone. But when you're able to do that, you can come back to a comfort zone. And then you can push again, right? Think about it like this as well too. When you go to the gym, why are you going to the gym? To make your muscles fail. You're getting to the point of 10 push-ups and you can't do anymore. Now you've failed. And then it's allowing you to go back again to say, 2 days from now, oh, I can do 12 push-ups now. And so if you take that approach and apply it to life, the same thing. Just apply it.
I think it's all in how you look at it, right?
100%.
Now, would you say there's any one thing that was the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome?
Man, there's been many different obstacles that I've had to overcome over the years. The one that sticks out, I would say, what was the difficult one, and I think a lot of people can maybe resonate with this, is if you're doing it with your spouse. That's difficult when the other partner doesn't want to do it, or they think that it's not going to work. And so then how do you overcome that obstacle? How do you get on the same page as your partner? And the best way to do it, at least that I found, there's two things. Number one, do the DISC analysis. So for real estate agents, a lot of them are familiar with this. It's a personality test. So what type of person are you? DISC is so important.
Yeah. Now I know what that is, but for someone that's listening that doesn't know, can you just overview like what the acronym stands for?
Sure. Yeah. So D is like a driver. They just get it done. I is like an influencer, somebody who has like that vision of where things are going. C is somebody who's cautious. They're calculated. They need the data. They're data driven. And S is somebody who likes systems and processes. And so, if you're like, say, a CS, those are usually really, they're good at admin roles. And I'm not trying to say that somebody who's not like a CS can't do it, obviously, but, they're usually pretty good. An I is somebody who's like kind of like that leader and like, this is the vision, this is where we're going. And also D's as well, too. But I highly recommend that you do it, and also good, too, like if you're building that business, is to do those DISC analysis for people that you're hiring as well. It really does help put the right people in the right positions in your organization. And then the second thing was the whiteboard. Here's a reason why the whiteboard, what's the whiteboard or your agenda or a piece of paper, whatever, is it allowed us to dream together. It allowed us to say, where are we going this year? And every year we sit down and we go through that and we argue and we have different ideas on where we want to go and where we want to grow personally or in the business, but at least we're hashing it out. And it's a communication. So the communication is so important at the beginning of the year. Okay, fine. This is what we're going to do this year. And everything else that comes in, we're not paying attention to it because this is what we said we're going to do this year. So I would say that's probably the biggest obstacle that I think most couples will face.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I had a mentor that once said, if you don't know where you're going, then you could end up someplace else. So I think that is extremely important, whether you're working individually or as a couple, but I think extra important when you are in a relationship so that you guys are aligned with your goals.
For sure. Yeah. And if you don't know where you're going, you fall into somebody else's design, and guess what they have designed for you? Not much.
A job. Exactly. So I guess with that, we're just going to take a really brief break for a word from our sponsors and we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Carlene Sue, and I'm the CEO of True Capital Real Estate. Our mission is to help busy professionals build lasting wealth. We focus on multifamily purpose-built rentals as a strategic and accessible investment strategy. Our goal is to demystify real estate investing and be your trusted partner to handle all aspects from beginning to end. Because after all, it's not actually about real estate. It's about having a robust and secure financial future so you can focus on the people and things that you care about the most.
Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I will get you right back to it, but I have some exciting news to share. Myself from Strategic Success and Corey McKinnon from Infinite Results have banded together so we can bring to you an amazing platform where you can learn and grow and have support on your real estate journey. We're building a community, we're building the help and the support, we've got the coaching for you, we've got the content. So if you want more information and see how it can help you on your journey, click the link below in the show notes or click the link in my bio for more information.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Inspire to Invest podcast. I've got Gary Hibbert with me today, and he's talking about his journey as a real estate investor over the last 15 years. You've talked about some of your successes and challenges and obstacles. Now, what I want to know is what's the absolute craziest thing that's ever happened to you as a real estate investor so far?
The craziest thing. I would say probably a little bit earlier on. I remember we put a tenant in one of our properties, and it was against our gut. We knew, and we put them in. It was like, I knew it.
Fences were going off, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? For 3 years, it was about 3 years. It was nonstop N1s, and going to the landlord and tenant board, and all the late rent payments, just everything. But what was good about it, when I look back at it, is hey, I learned how it worked. I understand the system. It allowed me to write a guide on how to screen tenants and what I did wrong. And then they finally did a midnight run, and we went in there. We went in there, and man, it was a mess. They destroyed it. They destroyed the home. I remember opening up the bathroom. And those big green flies. There was about like 6 of them, 7 of them that flew out of there because the city had turned the water off on them for like, I don't even know. I think it might have been like 3 months.
Oh, wow.
So they had no running water. They weren't even flushing it. They was going there and do what they got to do. And it was a mess. It was a mess. And so we had, I think, about 2.5 bins of garbage we had to pull out of there.
Yeah.
Completely gut the whole entire place. I think we put about 25 thou into it, which was at the time, it hit the pockets.
Yeah.
Well, and then we ended up selling it, and I think we made, I'm trying to think now, about almost 200 thou on it. So was it really that bad of a story?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just not nice to walk into something like that.
No, 100% it's not.
Do you think that when you think of that tenant now, like, you had your instincts going off telling you this isn't the right fit, like, what would you have done differently, like, looking back now? Like, was it just that you were in a rush to get it rented, or was there something in particular that made you feel that way? Like,
yeah, there's a couple things. Number one was I was using, and they were playing with my heartstrings, and so I was using it was the emotional part of like, okay, let's give them a chance, let's help them out.
Yeah.
As opposed to the fundamentals, the documentation, the income that they make compared to the rent that they're going to be paying.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of take the emotion piece out and just look at the data and the facts, that's always the best way to go. And trust a little bit of your gut as well too. If your gut's kind of saying something to you, just dig a little deeper to get the information that you need. Don't be scared. Don't rush into it. It's okay to keep your property vacant I'd rather keep it vacant for another 4 weeks, 6 weeks to get the right family in there.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. Now, obviously, you believe in mentorship and mindset and all of those good things that come along with coaching. What would you say is the best advice that you've received?
Sticky notes. That was a really good one. So sticky notes was, putting a sticky note on your mirror. Smile today. Be grateful today. Put a sticky note on your refrigerator. All right. Drink a glass of water.
Yeah.
Right. Put a sticky note wherever you need to put a sticky note, right? On your computer, turn off notifications. So it's just those little quick friendly reminders. And I did that. I don't have them around now, but it got me into those habits.
Yeah.
Right. Like go for a walk, get up in the morning, go for a walk. Like it's those little small, the difference between success and failure sometimes is just inches. It's not much. It's just those little small things that you decide to do, like getting up and, I go to yoga. I get up. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm in my car and I'm driving there and it's dark and I'm like, what am I doing? But I can tell you this, it's so rewarding and it allows you to clear your mind. There's no notifications. Nobody can get you. I'm not thinking about my businesses, because I'm trying to figure out how do I twist my body into this position she's asking me to do. Right?
And it also sets the tone for the day, right?
100%.
I mean, I was always really inconsistent working out. Like I've had a home gym for a long time, but when work got busy, I could sit down and work for an hour at 5 a.m. instead of working out. But now I've been like 3 years on track. I've probably only missed a couple weeks each year, but it's one of those things, like if I miss it, like I pay the price, like my energy is not the same, like my mood is not the same. So it's one of those things that, it obviously pays you back tenfold.
Oh, 100%. It reminds me of Brian Tracy, right? Like eat the frog.
Yeah.
And it's really like just get rid of that big thing at the start of the day. So it feels like you've accomplished some things. And then when I get back home, then I also try to take on at least 1 or 2 big things that is on my important list. Yeah. And that's tied to my whiteboard. So it feels like I'm making headway and traction.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate to see Brian Tracy speak at an event maybe about 10 years ago. And awesome. Just to your point about eating that frog, for anyone that doesn't know that term, is just doing the hard thing first. So if you have a to-do list, just tackle that biggest thing first, because everything else is going to get easier.
100%. And for anybody who's thinking about working out, maybe they don't work out and they're like, okay, fine, I'll start. You know what you do? Do micro workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So just say, you know what? I'm going to do 2 push-ups. And guess what? When you get down there, you're like, okay, fine, I might as well do 5. Okay, I'll get to 10. But just do micro. Do everything micro.
Yeah. Just start with the baby steps.
Yeah.
Now, I guess just looking forward instead of back, what would you say is next for you? And what's your financial freedom number?
Yeah. What is next for me? So next for me is to continue to grow the different businesses that I have. I'd like the brokers that we have. We have about 170 agents there, so we're trying to grow that. You know, we've got a goal right now of 500, but hopefully we'll get past that. Continuing to do more private lending, and the geographical freedom part of it. So, you know, we recently purchased a property down in Mexico. I'm actually heading down there tomorrow. And I want to be able to do things on my time when I want. So I love working hard, and I also enjoy playing hard. And then I think we'll probably, one other thing personally is, you know, we love our home that we're in right now, but our kids, well, one of my son moved out. My daughter's down in Mexico for about 6 or 7 months, but I think we might move from here and maybe a little bit further north, and maybe live a little bit more on the land. You know, and because we've got a cottage and I enjoy that as well too. So just being a little more outdoors, but continue to always help people, that I enjoy. And if I can do that, probably more with all the technology we have today, like more on Zoom and mentorship, I think that'll probably be a part of it in the next, 5-10 years.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. Now, in terms of favorite quotes and inspiration, I know you mentioned a couple, but what would you say is your most favorite inspiring quote?
Oh man, there's so many good ones out there. I would say, help as many people get what they want, and you can have every and anything you want. And make the goal to become a millionaire, not for the money, but for the person you'll become to achieve it. And if you really pay attention to that quote, it has nothing to do with the money. It's who do you have to become to actually acquire that money? That's really the reward. It's who you become, because the money will come and go. It's building the belief in yourself, the integrity, helping people around you. That's what it's about, and the human connection. I think people forget that. They get so caught up in building these businesses, but they forget the important piece of like the conversation that we're having, and meeting people and actually changing people's lives. That to me is priceless. Yeah, it's a power of connection. Yeah. And just to your point, just talking about purpose and fulfillment and stuff like that, I think it's all connected. And, at its core, really why I think a lot of us get into investing, because it's not just investing in real estate, it's investing in ourselves too, right? Yeah, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Now, for anyone that's watching right now that wants to get in touch with you and, to connect, but also maybe learn about some of the opportunities that you have, how can they find you? Yeah, the best way is Gary at smarthomechoice.ca. That's the fastest and the easiest way. If you just even Google my name, Gary Hibbert, you'll find me. Okay, sounds good. And we'll include all your details in the show notes below as well. Thank you, of course, for joining us today. And for anybody that's watching, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe below. And when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again to our sponsors, True Capital Real Estate, Strategic Success Consulting, and Infinite Real Estate Results, for bringing you this episode of Inspired to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.